Hi, my name is Raven. Welcome to these Twisted Times. If you enjoy true crime and mystery content, please do think about subscribing. I'm uploading several times a week, and I would love for you to be part of our community here. I do also want to give a disclaimer that the videos I create for YouTube are made for educational purposes only. I mean no harm or disrespect to anyone involved in the cases that I discuss, and you will find links down below for everything I have read and watched in order to make this story or prepare to tell this story for you today. And I do also want to tell you that in this particular case, there is a child who was murdered and there is some sexual content. So if that is going to bother you, then please do maybe give this one a pass and find one of the others to watch. And let's get right into it. So today I'm here to tell you the very interesting story of Paris Bennett and his family. And as with the other stories that I've told here on YouTube, it's always a bit of a conundrum for me as to where to start the story and how best to present it so it's not boring, but you get all the information involved. And after going back and forth a bit and starting videos in one particular style, I think I've decided to do it in another way. And let me also tell you, if this is your first video that you are watching of mine, I film in a tiny RV. So I am in a little metal box and it's raining outside. So if you hear noise on the roof, it is rain. And if you hear animals in the background, I am filming with a German Shepherd and a cat, and the cats come and go, and the dog moves as young dogs will, so there may be noises from there too. But anyway, in this version of my telling of this story, I want to start out with really the most explosive point in this story, and then I will backtrack and tell some of what I know about the various people involved in this story. So I'm going to start on a Super Bowl Sunday, and I am not a very sports-oriented person, and I live in a country other than the US. I'm up here in Canada, and yes, we do take hockey seriously. And there are many, many thousands and thousands of Canadians who religiously watch the Super Bowl. So it's not like I'm saying it's not a big deal here, because it is. But to say this story started on a Super Bowl Sunday is a bigger deal for some of you than it is for me. That's my point. So anyway, I'm starting this story in a sports bar, in a sports bar and restaurant combo thing in Abilene, Texas. And the story starts on February 5th of 2005. Now, that is a night that is seared onto the mind of probably everyone who worked for the police force, everyone who worked for the 911 department, certainly everyone who worked at the restaurant. This is a night that is probably remembered very vividly to this day, all of these years since, because, we just passed the 15th anniversary of this tragic day. But on February 5th of 2007, so it hasn't been the 15th day. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's been the 14th anniversary. Pardon me, I'm old. Early onset dementia a bit. But anyway, okay, so we just passed the anniversary of this day, and what happened that night that would change the lives of so many people, and certainly the immediate family members involved. The beginning of Sunday would have looked like a usual day, as days do. Almost all the time, you go about doing your daily activities, and on that particular day, a single mother of two named Charity, she'd gotten an extra shift at the sports bar where she worked. I'm sure working Super Bowl Sunday, not really a tongue twister, but I guess I'm just being a bit stumbly tonight. But anyway, so she got an extra shift, and it would have been a great shift to work to make even bigger tips than usual. So she got the shift. Now, Charity had a babysitter. This was not a new thing. She had been working at the restaurant for a while. They had lived in this town for a while. She felt very confident leaving her 13-year-old son and her 4-year-old daughter in the capable hands of a university student who had babysat before for them up until this point. So she got the shift, she went to work. But that day, while she was at work, everything in her life changed. And in order to tell the story best, what I'm going to do is I am going to backtrack so I can tell you a little of what I know of the mother's life before becoming a mother. And then I will come back to the events of that night, February 5th, 2007. And I will discuss the other parties involved. And it is a very, very complex story. So let me first, now that I've set the stage for you knowing that 2007 being a pivotal moment in so many people's lives, I'm going to go back to the 70s when Charity was born, and she grew up in Georgia, and her parents had both been married to other people before, and they had kind of a volatile relationship in that they were married and then they divorced and then they remarried, and they had a very busy trucking company. And so Charity had a very busy life as a child, but she had a life where she always felt that she came second place. She wasn't as important as the business. She wasn't as important as her mother's social life. She wasn't, this is how she felt. Her mother tells it differently. But to Charity, she always felt like she played second or third fiddle in this life. Now, she had the best of a lot of things. She went to great schools. She had lots of extracurricular events and activities. They had money to pay for nannies, and her, her life in many, many ways was enviable, and looks great from the outside because her parents had money. And, they had everything that money can buy for a young child. Now, in Charity's family, her life was really rocked when in 1980, her father was found murdered in their family home. And a little after the murder, very, very shortly after the murder, suspicion grew over Charity's mother, Kyla, being involved. And she actually was arrested for the murder. She was brought in. She spent some time in jail. She went to trial. She went through all of this, and she was acquitted. So she was able to come home and continue raising her daughter. But that was a very big sad, significant event that affected Charity. It couldn't help but affect Charity. She was 6 at the time. Her father was shot, execution style, in their home. And then her mom went off to jail and then returned home from jail. Now, when she got back from jail, she regained control of what had been her husband's business, and she went on to marry several times. So many times that Charity jokes about how her mother may or may not have been married as many times as Elizabeth Taylor. So there certainly were many stepfathers and, much probably chaos to a certain extent. And Charity always felt that she was never ever her mother's first priority. So Charity, as a child, she promised herself that if and when she ever became a mother, she would put her kids first. Now, in her life as a child and adolescent, things got kind of rocky in her teenage years, as they do for many of us. And for Charity, that meant getting involved with substances and having even having a period of time where she was addicted to using heroin. And then when she kind of pulled herself out of that and was off living on her own, she found out she was pregnant. And that was a real kind of light switch moment for Charity, because she was able to focus entirely on becoming a mother and the baby she was carrying. So she gave birth to her first child at either the age of 18 or 19. And she had a baby boy, and she named him Paris. And he was born in October of 1993. And life was really good. Life was great as far as Charity was concerned. She had so much love to give to her son, and she was so proud of being a mother, and she always put him first to the very best of her ability. And they had a very, very, very close relationship, and they just had a really tight bond. And they have so many photos, and they have videos, and they have all these, evidence that shows this great life, or what looks like a great life. Oh, pardon the noise in the background. Looks like a great life from the outside. Anyway, what they had with them being basically a dynamic duo in this really tight unit was kind of shaken up a bit when Paris was 8 and Charity got pregnant. And Paris was not at all happy about the idea of being an older brother. So Charity was really concerned when she was pregnant about Paris and what his reaction to having a younger sibling was. But then she had her baby Ella, baby girl, in April of 2002. And the second Ella was born, Paris doted on her. He was the ultimate big brother. He helped in every way he could. He was very, very helpful. He was there, he was helpful. There's the cute videotapes, there's many photos of them posing together. Beautiful children, beautiful single mom, beautiful life. It all looks beautiful and fun and enjoyable, and things were great. And they had their bumpy times, and they moved around a little bit, and there was a very brief period when Paris was 12 and Ella was 3. There was a period where Charity relapsed. She had been clean for she'd been clean 13 years by that point, and she relapsed, and she had a period where she was struggling with drug use again. So Paris and Ella spent a few brief periods staying with Charity's mother, Kyla, on her farm with her other child. But things after that bumpy patch with the drug use, things stabilized again, and they moved into a new town in Texas for a fresh start. And Charity had her work. She got a job working at a sports bar. She had a babysitter, or maybe she had several babysitters who she felt comfortable leaving Paris and Ella with to cover when she was at work. And life was good, or so she thought. Well, life was good, but then that's the way it works with life sometimes. Sometimes there are just curveballs, and things happen, and things change, and things are sometimes much different than what they appear like on the surface. So that brings me back to the evening of February 5th, 2007, when Charity's at work. She's working her shift. Super Bowl Sunday, the place is packed. She's, everything's in stride. You get in a flow when you're a server. I've been a server. You've got a million different things on your mind. You've got drinks memorized over here. You're getting orders over here. You know which tables need to have their bill. You got your system. You got your things you're going back and forth for. You got, she was in the flow, I'm sure. And police came, and at first, maybe police coming to the restaurant, maybe they just got off shift, maybe they want to come have a meal, maybe whatever, but they tell someone they have to speak to Charity. And so they probably got ushered into a manager's office or something, considering it was Super Bowl Sunday and the place was packed. And they proceed to tell her that there's been an accident at her home and that Ella is hurt. Now, Charity's mothering instinct kicks in full bore, and she starts to panic, and things are speeding for her and all the emotions are jumbled up to the surface. And she's saying, okay, well, take me to Ella, take me to Ella. I have to see Ella. I have to see Ella. And they're kind of trying to get her to calm down and trying to ask her more questions. And she's like, what's the matter? I have to go. We have to go now. There's something. You just told me my daughter's hurt. We have to go. Take me to her. Take me to her. And then they come out with the fact, well, actually, Ella's dead. So then I can't even fathom what kind of change that would lead her to go from the panicking of thinking it's something she can fix, or what happened, did the babysitter hurt, where's the babysitter, like what, then they're telling her Ella's dead. And so her panic, in her panicked mind, her mind shifts to questions about her 13-year-old son. Well, where's Paris? Was Paris hurt? Is Paris hurt? And they say, well, actually, it's all right. We have Paris. He's safe. And she's, asking all of these questions. And her mind, I'm sure, was an absolute jumble. And then they tell her that Paris has confessed to killing his 4-year-old sister, Ella. And so somehow, so then she's like, well, where is he? And they say, well, we have him. That's all right. He's safe. And they wouldn't let her go see him, I think, until the next day. And they did take her so that she could go see Ella. But what they'd done is they put Ella in a body bag and they had it zipped up right to the top of her chin. So all she could see was Ella's face. And so she's like completely overcome with grief, and she's asking all of these questions, and the police are still trying to get a read on the situation, because no matter how huge a city is, I mean, like, even New York City, you would not get called very frequently about a 13-year-old killing a 4-year-old sibling. So they're asking questions and they're letting out small amounts of information. And at first, the story is that that the 13-year-old son, he had some sort of, he slipped into a psychosis. He saw his he saw his sister as a demon, and he, in this kind of psychotic dream, he stabbed his sister. So that was the first story, which is unbelievably heartbreaking, even if that had been if that had been what it was. And that was what Charity, their mother, believed at first, because it, as far out as that seemed, it was somewhat believable, even though Paris had never shown signs, to her knowledge, he had never experienced having dreams and going into psychotic rages or anything. It was an answer. So that was what she thought at first. And the next day, she was able to go see Paris in jail, and she's still thinking that he fell asleep and he, slipped in, or he had fallen asleep beside Ella, and he had a nightmare and he thought she was a demon and he stabbed her. But details started to slowly emerge, and of course she would have asked pretty quick right off the bat, where was the babysitter? Because babysitters are supposed to stay with the kids. They're watching until the parents get home. That's how it works with babysitters. So it came out that Paris, the 13-year-old, had convinced the babysitter that it was all right for her to leave early. Whatever he said, maybe he said that his mom had called him, or, she forgot to tell the baby. Whatever he said something. And the babysitter left early, leaving the 13-year-old alone with the 4-year-old. And in this case, it's so incredibly rare for siblings, it's rare enough for children to kill anyone. So to have a sibling murder another sibling is very, very rare. And I never even heard the word sororicide, which is the word you use for when someone's killed their sister. But the story that he told everyone at first was completely a fabrication. And it was so clear to the police by looking at the crime scene that this 13-year-old was completely lying about everything. Because when he called in 911, he seemed upset on the phone, and the 911 operator was talking to him and trying to convince him to do CPR on his sister until the ambulance got there, on the off chance that she was alive. Because many times when people call 911, they will assume the person that they're with or the person they found is dead already, and sometimes their life can be saved. So she was talking to this 13-year-old and telling him he had to do compressions, and he was walking through doing compressions. He was counting out the sounds of doing compressions, but when the police got there, they determined that he hadn't moved the body at all, because he had stabbed her so many times that they would have been able to tell from blood evidence if he'd actually placed her on the floor as he was being instructed to. But the police didn't tell that. They didn't tell Charity any of this right in the first place, because they were still trying to understand the family dynamic, and because trying to get the answers, you can't share everything with people, no matter how close they are to the case. And it's so frustrating for those of us out here, when we're consuming true crime that's occurring right now, when we see these police and we see these what we suspect are suspects, and we think they're doing suspicious things, but police hold their cards close to their chest, and this is very much the case with the story of Paris Bennett. And I want to go briefly, just very, very briefly, into why Paris probably offered his description of what had happened, and how there is a history in his family that would have made that explainable. With Paris telling the 911 operator and then allowing his mother to believe this story, that he had fallen asleep beside Ella and he woke up from a bad dream and he thought she was a demon, so he got a knife and he stabbed her. The reason why I think that idea worked, or how well that story fit for Paris to use as an excuse, is his father, back when Charity was a teenager and she found out she was pregnant, and the relationship with the young man didn't work out and he left, but he came back a couple of years later, and he had in the interim been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. So I think that Paris, being the ultra intelligent, highly, highly intelligent person, even as a child, that he knew that his father was schizophrenic. So this story of waking up and seeing his sister as a demon sort of fit along with that story. But as the truth became clear, as the police were investigating and as they were finding more evidence, the truth was much, much more sinister than what he first said. And in my struggling to understand this case when I first heard it a couple of months ago, and the way I first passed judgment to where I am now after I've seen all this stuff about this case, I've come full circle, and I'm really interested to see what you guys will think of this story too, and I'm hoping we can have really interesting conversations, because the thing is, Paris, there were indications in his childhood of him having something up with him. There were signs at points that show certain tendencies towards violence, and it did kind of escalate to the point that this happened. There were times when maybe things could have been done to change the trajectory he was on. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling. I'm still formulating how to tell these stories in a way where it doesn't seem really, really boring and kind of encyclopedic and chronological, or all over the freaking place, which is how I tend to tell stories in real life. So anyway, let me get a little bit more back on track. So we have his story of what happened, that he fell asleep and woke up, thought she was a demon, and stabbed her. And we have the fact that the police understood right off the bat that he lied to the 911 operator about administering CPR. Then we have evidence coming forward that after he hurt Ella, he actually called a friend and had a 6-minute conversation before he even called 911. And so that's a little wild. And then when they had tested the room in which this all happened and tested his clothes, they found that he had semen in his clothes. And when they did an autopsy on Ella, they found that she had semen on her. And he had sexually, he beat her, he strangled her, he stabbed her 17 times with a butcher knife, and he sexually assaulted her, which eventually I think we find out it was the act of beating his sister to death. That was what was sexually gratifying for him. So, but, and when Charity, their mother, when she heard about the sexual stuff, she was very upset with Paris, and she confronted him in juvenile, and he went off the handle. He attacked her with the table, and there were a few very, very challenging points in this story, and me and my daughter, ever since I first heard of this story, we have had so many conversations about how we could not stick with Paris if we were in Charity's shoes the way Charity has. And she had all of these experiences shortly after her son murdered her daughter. She had things happen like, the court was hiring psychologists to analyze Paris and try and figure out how this happened, and his IQ at the age of 13 was 142, which there is less than, very, very few people have such a high IQ, and and then on his computer hard drive, it was shown that he was searching violent porn, BDSM, bondage, even snuff. And I'm not sure when he'd started getting into that, but he had been watching that the night that this happened. And his mother, Charity, had psychologists who had testified in court approach her after the court case was over and tell her what their diagnosis of him was, because they felt ethically they had to share that with her. And he was sentenced, as a 13-year-old, he was sentenced to 40 years for what he did to Ella. And during the whole court case, Charity was told, you can't get therapy, because if you do therapy, anything you say in therapy can be subpoenaed for court and can be used against you or used against your son or used. So she had this 2-year period where she couldn't get any help with dealing with all of the emotions and everything she was going through, and she had the court system where she had to go into court and she didn't know where to sit, because half of the courtroom were people who were there for the victim, and then the other half are there because they are in some way related to the perpetrator of the crime, and she is both. Her son murdered her daughter, so she put a chair in the middle of the aisle, and that's how she attended court. And so he was sentenced to 40 years, and she was getting told this information from these psychologists. And, there was one that told her that her son was a sociopath, and then there was another that told her she shouldn't waste her money on going to see her son. She should spend that money on changing her identity and moving out of state in case he ever gets out of jail. And I can't even fathom the grief of going through something like this, but she has stuck with her son to this day. There have been a few breaks in time when she sees him, and their relationship has hills and valleys, as all of our relationships do. And she actually formed, several years after this horrible murder took place, she formed a nonprofit organization named after her daughter, and she helps anyone affected by violence. It's this all encompassing organization throughout the US, and she does these things that just amaze me. Like in one interview she was saying she gets asked by mothers of convicted pedophiles if she can go visit their sons in jail. So she will go to visit convicted pedophiles because their mothers can't go see them. And she does all of these amazing things as part of this Ella Foundation, and she has stayed close to her son. But in her relationship with her son, I do want to mention something intriguing I found when I found one documentary. I didn't think I would have access to one of the documentaries about this case because I'm not living in the US, but I did find a documentary made several years ago that involves a lot of interviews with Charity's mother, Kyla. And it is so interesting, the similarities between Grandma Kyla and grandson Paris. And the fact that Kyla was charged with murdering her husband, she got off. But there are some similarities, and Paris from in jail has tried to manipulate the system, and he has appealed to his grandmother to send him written materials that he's usually not allowed to have because they're too graphic or they're too sexual. And she did actually, the grandma did send him some of those materials. She followed his directions. There was something about sending one of them in pieces, and on the one picture where there was a cartoon drawing of naked, a naked woman, he told his grandma to have someone draw a bikini top on the naked part. Like, it's a fascinating case, and a very interesting family who were bound together by murder and death. And I've had a lot of tragedy in my family, although not on this scale. I keep on saying to everyone I know and people I talk to online, I'm about to cover a case that makes all of our families look like peaches and cream, which it does. But so Paris is in jail. This happened in 2007, so he has served 13 or 14 years of his 40-year sentence. He is now 28, I believe. He has been interviewed by Pierce Morgan, and he's been interviewed by a few other people, and he was quite extensively interviewed for this documentary that was made in 2017. And he is definitely a sociopath, and quite likely a psychopath as well. He stopped agreeing to get tested when he was still a minor, and now that he's an adult, it would be his choice to have any further testing. But it would be intriguing, and I hope at some point he may agree to it, because if nothing else, we need to learn more about people who have that type of mind and that way of thinking so that we can better protect ourselves and maybe learn how to utilize people with certain types of minds before, or in a way where they don't fall into criminality. But he is eligible for parole in 2027, and he is kept unaware of where his mother lives, although he may know now because she has moved to live on the same farm with her mother. They were estranged for a number of years after this happened, and now they are living on the same property together. Paris's mother, Charity, actually has gone on to have another child, so she has a son, and she's written a book which I plan on reading. I believe it's called How Now, Butterfly, and I find everything about this case so interesting because I'm interested in trying to understand what's hereditary in some families and what kind of warning bells there are. I know there were several instances of things that happened in his early childhood and his older childhood that could have been really strong indications of the potentials of something like this happening. And I, as I said very clearly in the beginning, I mean no harm or disrespect to anyone involved. If by some strange chance, either Kyla or Charity sees this, I am fascinated by you both. I would love to meet you both. I do intend on donating to the Ella Foundation at some point in the future, and I plan on reading your books, and I would love to meet you and talk to you, and I admire your compassion and your the strength of your love for your son, Charity. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story. I will be including everything I've watched and read down below. I will, as in some of the other cases I've done, I will be delving deeper into it probably, and I would love to meet the two women involved. Hats off to both of you, and thank you so much for, oh my God, sorry about the cat noise. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you have enjoyed this story. I will be making more videos for you tomorrow, and this will be the first in a series I plan on doing about families. Here comes a cat crinkling on over. Anyway, it's one of my interests to look at families, family annihilators, just different types of family situations. And this, I consider, Paris Bennett very much is a family annihilator. He killed the family he had, and something new has formed in its place, and it's an intriguing case. And as I said before, if you like true crime and mystery content, please do subscribe so you can be part of our little troop of these twisted time peeps. And I will see you again soon. And I will also try to stick to some form of a schedule. But right now I'm not working, so I'm trying to make as many videos as I can about as many different kinds of cases. And I enjoy making the videos so much. I haven't taken very much time learning how to edit and stick them together and all that other good stuff that'll make it a little easier for you to navigate. But thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed my story, and I will see you again soon. Bye.